Today we're going to answer some of the most asked questions I've heard. Things about diminishing returns, speaker design, why it's different today, and whether or not that used hi-fi market is going to become prohibitively expensive. First question, why did speaker design change so much since the 80s? Back then, you had big three-way speakers with 12 or 15-inch woofers. They were common. Now most floor standards use 6.5-inch drivers and claim to hit below 50 hertz. Is that really possible? Or are we forced to use subwoofers now? It comes from A. Honey. Well, a couple of things. The biggest one is, well, they got expensive to ship, and driver technology got a little bit better. But more importantly, they got more expensive to ship. In the 80s, there was a transition to Vietnam, China, and Malaysia for speaker manufacturing. And really, by the 90s, almost all of the affordable speaker manufacturing was done overseas. Can they hit less than 50 hertz? Yes, absolutely. Because most of those drivers are going to be multiple drivers. They're going to be wired in parallel, which actually raises the efficiency of a speaker. Port length has also gotten better. Cabinet resonance has been reduced if the speaker's designed properly. But what we have seen is a decrease in overall speaker efficiency because you're using smaller drivers and you have to squish the tweeter efficiency down to meet those drivers so the speaker sounds cohesive. It takes a little bit more power to get the same SPL. Now, amplifier power has also increased. All of this, in my opinion, is about price and shipping costs. Also about footprint. Retailers, distributors, manufacturers, more speakers, same floor space. Doesn't mean they're not good though. A lot of the big woofer stuff that I've heard doesn't have as much bass impact as some of these smaller drivers. Thank you for the question. It's a great question. You can still get some of these today. Klipsch, KLH. Tecton is probably the most affordable company that makes big drivers, but you're from Australia, so I have no idea about Australian manufacturers that are still using big woofers. This one comes from Matthew Williams. With new price increases coming fast and furious, do you believe the used stereo market will become more a force in the audio market? I'm not talking about vintage, but more recent stuff from 2010 and younger. That's a great question. A bit of a nuanced question though, because there's really different categories amongst audio. You have very cheap direct-to-customer audio, think Fozzy, IEMA, SMSL topping. You have more of the mass market stuff from Onkyo, Pioneer, Marantz. And then you have more of the specialty boutique stuff. Think Advanced Paris, Unison Research. And then you have mass market direct-to-customer brands such as Emotiva and Schiet. I believe it all depends on basic economics and the demand for these specific pieces. I think for the low-end Chinese import stuff, I don't think there's going to be any difference in price. With that, there's a ton of it out there. People are just getting their feet wet with audio equipment or it's a secondary system. Somebody wants to upgrade, and a 20% increase on a $100 product is only $20. I don't think that'll have an impact. Stuff from Marantz, Pioneer, Onkyo, they have a pretty fast upgrade schedule. So there's new models coming out it used to be every year. It's more like every 2 years now. There's always an increase in specifications. So a user that wants a new one probably doesn't care about their old one and just wants to get something from it. And if that product is discontinued, it drives down the price even further. As far as boutique brands go, there's a pretty decent used market that is reliable. Think, not the Music Room. Yeah, maybe it is the Music Room. I think they sell used gear and you can actually trade in gear on their new gear. I don't really think in general it's going to have any impact. I think you're always going to be able to get stuff cheaper used than you were new. Because this isn't a car or anything that's necessary. And normally the people that are getting rid of the used stuff are doing so to get the new stuff. And since this is a small hobby and not necessary for everyday living, I don't think it's really going to have an impact. I could be wrong, but if I'm looking at all these different categories and being logical about it with the way new companies upgrade new products, if you get the previous gen or even 2 generations prior, Still a great product, still a fairly modern and functional product, especially in 2-channel. I don't think there's going to be a huge increase in used prices. Great question from Save Ferris. As somebody getting back into audio, I'm learning about Class D amps and entry-level gear. In your opinion, where does the law of diminishing returns kick in? What should be aspirational, and where's the real sweet spot before things get ridiculous? That's a moving target, because I think as audiophiles, I think we want an easy answer, and that easy answer is if you spend X amount, that's where the law of diminishing returns kicks in. So just spend X amount. The problem is all companies, all manufacturers have a different markup. They also have different go-to-market strategies, where Emotiva, Schkit, PS Audio are direct-to-customer. Marantz, Onkyo, Pioneer, they sell through retailers and distributors. Fozzy, SMSL, etc., direct-to-customer. Weem used to be direct-to-customer, but now through dealers. It's a difficult question to answer because there's a lot of things to take into consideration. I've heard Class D amplifiers from Fozzy Audio that, if I'm listening at a reasonable level, sound as good to me as some amps costing 10 times the price. The difference is you may have some quality issues, longevity issues, reliability issues, serviceability issues. And even amongst Fozzy Audio, there are, I wouldn't say huge sonic differences, but there are sonic differences, especially when it comes to dynamics. If you're looking to spend wisely, I would get brand specific instead of price specific. Look at brands that have similar design philosophies over time. So Emotiva, they have a modular design. They use the same power supply across a lot of different products. And I know Dan, the owner, and we talk about how they mark up their products. So the philosophy I kind of have is find a brand that you trust. Emotiva is a great example of that. You know you're getting high value with Emotiva, and as you spend more with Emotiva, there's at least better parts and better engineering that went into that product. I would also look at some boutique brands like Unison Research. They're Italian made. They're expensive, but you can find them sometimes used. The Unico Primo is their most affordable integrated amplifier. That can be had for around $1,600. So when you're looking at an amplifier, also look at the design of it. Does it have discrete components? Does it look kind of similar to the way things used to be built? Or is it all board based? Because there's a convergence of old school design and new school design. The Class D stuff, if well designed, is all on a board. So what you're risking there is longevity. And you're risking, will I even be able to reuse this chassis? If you get something like the Unico Primo, you're going to be able to reuse the chassis, and there's going to be repairability with that product. And if you are looking at the entry-level product from these higher-end brands and you can find them used, I mean, that's a great deal. I would say if you choose wisely and you get it from a brand that you trust, the $1,000 to $2,000 is probably the sweet spot. And honestly, I don't have a ton of experience beyond that price point anyway, so I couldn't tell you, hey, if you spend $5,000, it's going to sound like a $20,000 amplifier. The other issue is everything sounds different. And again, this goes back to people want an easy answer, but there is no easy answer. Even amongst Macintosh, they have autoformer amps and they have non-autoformer amps. Even amongst speakers in the same category, they all have a bit of a different sound. It's an impossible question to answer, but it's one that people try to answer all the time, diminishing return. Because everybody has a budget, and of course they want to spend that budget wisely. And if they can say to themselves, well, if I spend $800, that's just as good as a $5,000 amp. But we're not asking the right questions. We should be asking what type of markup is on this product, and nobody really knows what the markup is. What is the sound characteristic of this product? And what is the most important sound characteristic to me? Is it soundstage and imaging? Is it clarity? But if you want an easy answer, if you're buying a direct-to-customer import product from SMSL or whatever, for a DAC, $200. You can spend $1,000 on a Chinese SMSL DAC. I don't think it sounds much better than $200 DAC. For amplifiers, depending upon the topology, I don't think spending more than $200 on a SMSL or Fozzy amp is going to give you anything new. with Emotiva, you can go right up the price range. The most expensive Emotiva amp is going to sound better than the least expensive amp, but I would still try to stick in that $1,000 range, unless you're going differential. Differential's awesome, and it's going to be more expensive because it's basically like having 2 amps in one. Turntables, I would look for something that has a high quality cartridge, something that has maybe an Ortofon Blue cartridge. For DACs, it's kind of a crapshoot. If you're going Delta Sigma, something like an AKM or Sabre DAC, I don't think you need to spend more than $500, unless it's something from Gishelli Labs or Schkit. If you're gonna go R2R, I don't think you need to spend much more than $1,000. And speakers is gonna be so subjective, it's gonna depend upon what you want. I personally will never see myself spending probably more than $2,000 on a set of speakers, unless it's something that stirs me emotionally and has heritage vibes, real wood veneer. I would buy something from Klipsch, KLH, Wharfdale. But that's just me, and it's how the speaker makes me feel, not necessarily how the speaker sounds, if that makes sense. If you're really interested in diminishing returns, check out yesterday's video where I talk about my hi-fi journey and what I thought was important wasn't really important. Also, if you want some awesome coffee, check out the link in the description. Maybe consider joining the Cam Coffee Club. You get a free Cam Coffee Club mug when you sign up for the Cam Coffee Club.